In today's video, we're going to continue our new series here covering all 31 teams, doing an in-depth look and analysis at their prospect pools, covering all their top prospects, as well as the full coverage of the 2018 NHL Draft. Today's team we're discussing is the Philadelphia Flyers, and that's coming up next. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. If you're new to the channel, thanks for stopping by. We review and discuss all 31 NHL teams. So if you're a huge hockey fan, consider subscribing and clicking the bell so you don't miss anything. So as I mentioned off the top, today we're going to continue our series here doing a very in-depth look and analysis at all the 31 teams' prospect pools, and we're focusing today on the Philadelphia Flyers. The Philadelphia Flyers already have a good amount of youth in their lineup, along with some good veterans as well. I mean, you've already got a lot of younger players like Shane Gostisbehere, Ivan Provorov, Travis Konecny, so there's some good exciting players already in the lineup, and they've got a lot more on the way. Some of these guys already have a little bit of NHL experience. They've got a couple monster defensemen that are real big, ready to make the jump here. They've got some interesting high-skilled forwards. They have their potential goalie of the future, and a couple other goalie prospects in the system as well. So they certainly have a lot to look forward to. So let's jump in here. Now, first of all, I want to talk about their likely goaltender of the future, Carter Hart. They drafted Carter Hart in 2016 with the number 48th overall pick. Obviously, he's out of the WHL, played for the Everett Silvertips. Hart has been an all-star. He's really put up some fantastic numbers. He's represented Canada multiple times at the World Junior Championships, won a silver medal and a gold medal. This past season in the WHL, he put up a goals against average of 1.6. That's pretty stingy. You don't get much more stingy than that. And a save percentage of .947. So obviously he had an awesome season. His team actually did fairly well. They had a decent playoff run, came up short of winning the league championship, but either way, he personally had an awesome year, and he's well on his way to developing into an NHL goaltender. If you listen to interviews or read interviews with Carter Hart, it looks as though he's quite eager to get to the NHL as soon as possible. But as we all know, goaltenders do take a little bit longer to develop. And I mean, he's still quite young, and there's lots of time. There's no need to rush him here. As much as the Flyers could use some help in the net with some consistency, if you throw out like a 19, 20-year-old goaltender in there, you very well may not get that right away anyway. So more likely Carter Hart's going to start in the American Hockey League. But he certainly has all the raw potential to be a goalie of the future. He's always performed well on the big stage. The thing I like most about Carter Hart is his demeanor. He's just very calm and cool and collected in the net. He kind of reminds me of Carey Price in that sense. I mean, they do kind of have some similarities as far as their goaltending skills, but that's not so much really. It's just the calmness and how he doesn't seem to get rattled. He's able to have a short-term memory, so after allowing a goal, he's able to kind of get back at it and forget what happened. Obviously, as a goalie, you need to have a very good short-term memory, as we all know, because if you let things get to you and you get rattled, then it's just going to ruin your game. So obviously, I like that aspect of him, the mental toughness and the ability to kind of bounce back. Personally, I think Carter Hart more than likely is the goalie of the future for the Philadelphia Flyers. You have a lot to be excited about. I know it's been a long time since they've had a real solid goaltender in the net for a lengthy period of time who's really been able to accomplish a whole lot. It looks as though when they may finally have the answer to that problem. Now, of course, you can't forget goaltender Alex Lyon as well. Obviously, he's been playing in the American Hockey League, had a chance to play last year with the Flyers when we saw Elliott and Neuwirth both go down. Now, of course, Lyon's a little bit older, so, you know, depending on who you ask, he may not really be a top prospect any longer, but certainly I can see the possibility of Carter Hart and Alex Lyon maybe being a goaltending tandem here in another year or two, with Brian Elliott and Michael Neuwirth both having shorter term deals and not having the best play, most consistent play. It certainly seems reasonable that very well could happen here in another season or two once they both have a little bit more time to develop in the minor leagues here. Now, as I mentioned, they have a couple of monster defensemen. I'm sure a lot of Flyers fans are likely quite familiar with these guys, but these two guys, they're really big guys. I mean, we're going to start here with Phillippe Myers. Phillippe Myers is a defenseman here that grew up in New Brunswick in the province of Canada here where I am from. He grew up down in Moncton, which is just a little ways from me. So obviously he's a really big, strong defenseman. Went undrafted, signed as a free agent by the Philadelphia Flyers back in 2015. He's a 6'5" right shot defenseman, and for a guy that big, I find he gets around the ice pretty well. Like, he's a pretty decent skater, pretty defensive minded. It's kind of odd in my opinion that he kind of went undrafted. He had a pretty decent junior career, but obviously not enough of a standout to get drafted. The Flyers were able to snag him as an undrafted guy. He's played pretty well, so he's got some time Now in the American Hockey League, he's played well for the Lehigh Valley Phantom. He got into 50 games last year, put up 21 points, but he was more impressive on his defensive side of the game. So Phillippe Myers is a guy, he's a pretty decent two-way defenseman. He can move the puck. He's a pretty good skater, so his breakouts are pretty decent. You can classify Myers as a two-way defenseman with a little bit of an offensive upside, but it's going to be more of a shutdown type of defenseman. As I mentioned, Myers is a right shot defenseman, projected to be like a shutdown type of defenseman here. So when you take a look at the other prospect we're going to talk about next, Samuel Morin, now he is projected to be a very similar type defenseman. He's a left shot, so this very well might be your shutdown pair of the very near future here. Now, as I mentioned, Myers is a very big guy, but Morin has even got him even more. He's 6'7". This guy's an absolute monster back there. The only difference here is with Morin being 6'7". Unlike Myers, I just don't find he moves around the ice quite as well. His foot speed is a little bit of a concern, so he's going to have to continue to focus hard on improving his skating abilities and his speed. But he's so big that he's really good in the corners. Again, as far as playing against other teams' top guys on the penalty kill, blocking shots. He's going to be strong in the corner, strong in the puck. He is pretty decent at breaking the puck out as well, getting that first pass out of the zone. Morin's season last year was derailed by injury. He didn't get into a whole lot of games, which is unfortunate. It might have stalled his development here a little bit. But I don't expect that to be an issue longer term. The Flyers still extended him here on a new contract. Obviously, due to his size, he's really good at clearing out players in front of the net. I mean, really, if you think about the possibility of having a D tandem of Morin and Myers on the back end, 6'5" and 6'7", it's going to make it awfully tough on the opposing forwards to go to the net. These guys are going to be so big and strong that they're going to clear them out no problem. Going into the corners, realistically, it should be really tough on the opponent. Like I said, if they're good at moving the puck out, good at clearing the net, then they really should have the ability here to possibly make an excellent shutdown D pair in the future. Like I mentioned before, you throw in some other defensemen that are already on the roster right now between Gostisbehere and Provorov. You throw in these two guys, and that could be a really solid top four decor here for a long time for the Flyers organization. Now, the next prospect I want to discuss is center iceman Morgan Frost. Now, Morgan Frost has a tremendous upside on the offensive side of the game here. He's a very highly skilled center iceman playing in the Ontario Hockey League for the Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds. There is a possibility we might see Frost get an opportunity this year. At the very least, I wouldn't be surprised if he's allowed to get up to that 9-game sample size before they have the option of either sending him back or keeping him. I'm not 100% sure if he'll be a full-time player this year. I wouldn't be shocked if he does one final year of junior. But at the same time, in my opinion, he doesn't really have a whole lot to accomplish at that level. He's had tremendous success, and I think for his development, it might actually be best to move him on to the NHL. But at the same time, with their roster, and you look at their forward group, it's debatable whether or not there's room for him. If you take a look at their other forward group right now between Giroux and Voracek and Simmons, and you get JVR, who they just signed, Nolan Patrick, Travis Konechny, he likely wouldn't get a chance to play much in the top six. He likely would be a bottom six kind of guy, and being so offensive. Although with today's NHL, with your third and fourth lines needing more ability to score, that certainly would not hurt at all. But if he does get a chance with the Flyers this year, likely going to be in a smaller capacity for sure. But at the same time, it is possible he could end up going back to junior. Last year in the OHL, he put up 112 points, was an absolutely dynamic player. Obviously, Sault Ste. Marie had a very strong team as well, so he was surrounded by good players as well. So not only is this guy a good playmaker, good stick handler, but he knows how to finish as well. The thing about Morgan Frost that's most impressive is the way he can anticipate the game. He has incredibly high hockey IQ, so he really reads the play well, has great vision, and can he's always a step or two ahead of the play to kind of set things up here. He makes everybody around him better. I don't think it would really matter too much who you give him for line mates. They're automatically going to be better players and probably increase their production from playing with a strong guy like Morgan Frost. Morgan Frost was their 2017 first-round selection, going number 27 overall, and considering how low in the first round he was selected, that very well could be a steal. So considering what the Flyers already have in their lineup right now, they have a pretty solid top six. Even their top nine doesn't look too bad. You throw in another very gifted offensive forward like Frost with the great passing ability and the great finish. I mean, obviously that just creates even more opportunity for this team to be a real offensive juggernaut here moving forward. The next prospect I want to talk about today is Dermot Roos, the 2016 first-round selection, currently playing in the QMJHL for the Acadie Bathurst T10. He just came off a Memorial Cup championship win with this team. They had a tremendous year. He was playing previously with Chicoutimi, came over to the Titans and actually played extremely well, fit in very nicely. He's originally obviously a Russian player, been playing over in the QMJHL for a while now. After coming over from Russia, it looked like it took him a little bit of time to adjust to the North American game, but he seems to be settling in a little bit better now. Rupsov's greatest abilities is his defensive play and his hockey sense, really. Like, he's a really smart player. He's a really good two-way guy, too. Like, he can be strong in a penalty kill. He can play on a shutdown type of line. He's got a great passing ability as well. So when he does have a chance to go on the offense, he can certainly put up the points. He's a pretty good playmaker that way. He put up 32 points in 38 games after coming over to Acadie Bathurst from Chicoutimi last year. Went on to the Memorial Cup, played in 4 games, got 2 points there as well. So he's certainly not a stranger to the score sheet. He can certainly put up the points, but by the time he transitions to the North American game, I figure more than likely I kind of project him as more of a third line type of player. I can probably, like I said, play on a defensive type line that has some offensive upside. In today's NHL, you really need 4 lines that are pretty quick and can score. Obviously, secondary scoring is huge. I still think he's a couple years away from the NHL myself. I think he likely would need a couple years of seasoning in the American Hockey League here. So I would probably say we're probably about 2 seasons out from getting a debut from this player. Now let's jump over to the 2018 first-round selection that the Flyers just selected here. He's an American Morin player, Joel Farabee. He's a left winger. Pretty good offensive upside here as well. Obviously, he's got a chance to play a lot with some other dynamic players in the U.S. National Development Program. He had a chance to play with other guys like Oliver Wahlstrom and Jack Hughes. I've seen some draft ranking services that kind of had Farabee ranked lower as they wasn't sure how he would fare without strong players around him like a Wahlstrom or a Hughes. So I guess we'll tell here. He's off to Boston University this fall, so obviously he won't have those guys on his line anymore, so he'll be playing with some different players. So I guess we'll get a better indication here of how he can adapt and play with different players. But he's a really solid, he's one of the better two-way forwards in the 2018 draft class for sure. Like, he's a type of player who's really good offensively, but he can also participate a lot on the penalty kill, block shots, and help that way in the defensive zone quite a bit. But he is a natural goal scorer as well. But like I said, when you're playing with guys like Hughes and Wahlstrom, who have a lot of playmaking abilities, it certainly might make things easier for him to score some goals. So I guess the time for him to really prove that he is a natural goal scorer and he doesn't need necessarily to be around those guys and he can be a leader on the line, the time will show that here at Boston University. So I guess we'll see here over the next year or two. There's no reason to rush Farabee. They're so deep at the forward group between what's already on the roster and a few of these other players on the way up here. They can certainly take their time. It's hard to say how long he'll stay in college. We've seen some players go to play college hockey, go 1 year, sometimes just 2, 3. You just never know. So either way, he's likely a couple years away at the very least. The one thing though that all the scouts have to say about Farabee that's certainly in common is he has really strong work ethic. He has high energy, high tempo, and he works really hard in all situations all the time. So that's something that you can't really teach sometimes. It's kind of ingrained in you. So obviously that's a great characteristic for Farabee to have. So not only is he a great offensive player, he's a good defensive player, but he works really hard and plays with high energy. He's got pretty good speed, gets around the ice well. So obviously those are a lot of good traits for a really solid hockey player. Personally, like the last prospect we discussed, I kind of see Farabee potentially being a second line type of player, but more than likely could be a very solid third line left winger. That's kind of where I think he more than likely slots at the NHL. Now the last prospect here we're going to get into a little bit of detail on is Mathew Stroma, a 2017 4th round selection. Mathew Stroma is the brother of Ryan and Dylan Strome, obviously already drafted into the NHL here. Obviously Ryan Strome plays for the Oilers, Dylan Strome's in the Coyotes organization, still trying to get his feet wet here and to become a full-time NHL player. Mathew Stroma is a very big, skilled winger who really kind of gets around the ice well and has a really complete game. He's over 6'4", 205 pounds, so he's got a really good big body here. Around the ice really well, has a complete game. He is offensively gifted, like his brothers that were at the lower levels as well, but he does have a stronger defensive game and an overall more complete game. His best asset is probably his shot. He's got an excellent shot, very accurate, very crisp, very hard. So obviously he can score a lot of goals with that shot. He's got a great release. He's also got very good hands. He's a good stick handler and can also be a pretty good playmaker and setup guy. So he's pretty gifted that way like his brothers are. Got a better defensive game, got some really good size, and because he's coming into the NHL probably with lower expectations, a little bit less fanfare, I think that might actually help him longer term so he doesn't have all that pressure to live up to. But I think out of all the Stromes, I think he has the most complete game. Like I said, he's got an excellent shot. He's a good stick handler, good playmaker. He's also playing on a really strong team in the Ontario Hockey League, playing for the Hamilton Bulldogs. Obviously, the Bulldogs were one of the teams in the Memorial Cup this past year, so they had an excellent showing here, at a great season. So he's surrounded by some other really strong character players as well, which will likely help in his development. Now, I think Mathew Stroma is likely 2 to 3 years away from having a crack at the NHL here. He's definitely going to need a little bit more time in junior, a little bit more time in the American Hockey League. But I just thought I'd mention him. He's one of the more interesting prospects in the Flyers organization. Now, another prospect to keep your eye on is the 2014 5th round choice, and that's Oscar Lindblom. He did get into some games last year, played 23 games with the Flyers, put up 6 points. Now, another prospect to keep in mind as well as Isaac Ratcliffe. He was a second-round pick last year in the 2017 NHL Draft. Ratcliffe ended up scoring 41 goals last year in the Ontario Hockey League, so he's another solid prospect coming as well. Where he was a second-round pick last year, he hasn't had as much attention, but he certainly is developing nicely in the Ontario Hockey League and has another player who has the a goal-scoring ability coming down the pipes here. So I'm going to put a graphic up on the screen now that covers the full screen. It's going to show you the full summary of the 2018 draft selections, and we'll go through them here quickly so you have an idea who else is coming down the pipes here. Now, obviously, the first one, Joel Farabee of the United States National Development Program. Obviously, he was their number 1 selection, number 14 overall. We already discussed Farabee, pretty solid two-way left winger. They had a second first-round pick as well, which was number 19 overall, where they selected Jay O'Brien of the United States high school system. Now, not too often you see the Flyers or many teams really go to a high school type player, but O'Brien really has a lot of potential. I know this was a bit of a head-scratcher. A lot of people were confused over this pick, as a lot of ranking systems had him ranked much lower than a first-round pick. Most places had him going in the second round. But obviously the Flyers saw something that they really liked, and after doing some more research on it, it looks as though that O'Brien really has a lot of potential here as a really gifted offensive type player. So he very well could potentially be a steal. A lot of other people were confused over that selection based on who else was left up on the board, but we'll see how that turns out. But I know after researching it a little bit further, there's a lot of people that found that are really high on Jay O'Brien and his offensive abilities. As we've already discussed, the Philadelphia Flyers very well might be set for years to come on the blue line based on who else is already on the roster in Philadelphia, plus guys like Myers and Morin coming up the ranks here. But of course, they still drafted some more defensemen. You can never have too many of these guys. With the number 50 selection, they took Adam Ginning, a Swedish defenseman who has a lot of promise and potential as well. The number 112 selection, they took another defenseman out of Sioux Falls in the USHL, John St. Avani. The number 127 selection, another defenseman, Wyatt Wiley out of Everett in the WHL. Obviously, he's coming from the same junior team that Carter Hart plays for. The number 143 selection, they selected Samuel Ersson, who's another goaltender out of Sweden. So obviously, as I mentioned, they do have some pretty strong goaltending prospects already between Lyon and Hart and Sandstrom, and then they throw one more goalie in the mix. But considering how long goalies take to develop as well, you can never really have too many in the system here. The odds of a lot of these guys developing into NHL goalies are slim, unfortunately. With pick number 174, they selected Gavin Hain, a center out of the USHL. In their final selection, number 205 overall, they selected Marcus Westphal, a Swedish center iceman as well. So as you can see, they're really loaded up on the two strongest positions in the NHL, and that's center and defense. In my opinion, the two hardest positions to fill here. So you can never have too many of those players. The more you have developed into NHL players or strong prospects will only help you more down the road. A lot of these center icemen sometimes turn into wingers at the NHL level anyhow. So all in all, I think the Philadelphia Flyers are in excellent shape with their prospect system here. I mean, they likely have their goalie of the future. They might have their shutdown defensive pair of the system as well. They have some more offensive players like Morgan Frost coming up the ranks. So between what's already on the main roster and what's coming, I think there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic about the Flyers moving forward. So let me know down in the comments down below, who is your favorite prospect that you're most looking forward to getting onto the Flyers main roster here in the next little while. If you're new to the channel, I hope you consider subscribing. We cover all 31 NHL teams, and there's plenty of content here for all hockey fans to enjoy. So if you're new, hit that subscribe button. If you like this video, hit the like button as well. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you very much for watching, everybody. We will catch you next time.